Welcome to the Kwibuka podcast, written by Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, minister at Minubumwe, and recorded by Josue Ishema. After years of research, he has collected and compiled information on different actions that led to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. In this segment, we will discuss the role of intellectuals in the preparation and execution of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Many intellectuals, high-ranking officials, and members of religious denominations played a significant role in spreading the ideology of hatred and encouraging the genocide against the Tutsi. This involvement can be explained by three historical facts. First, the ideological context of Parme Hutu, a system that Rwandan intellectuals wanted to defend vehemently. Second, the intellectuals' education in schools and universities was marked by the dominance of ethnic ideology, favoring Hutu as the sole holders of the right to education and employment. Most Rwandan intellectuals in 1994 graduated from institutions involved in anti-Tutsi activities in 1973, continuing discriminatory practices in various roles. Third and lastly, their participation was influenced by their long association with the single-party regime, the National Revolutionary Movement for Development in Rwanda, MRND, which favored the rights of the majority Hutu over the labeled minority Tutsi. Consequently, the majority believed they exclusively held all fundamental rights. During a public MRND meeting in Kabaya, Gisenyi, on November 22, 1992, Leon Mugesera, a university professor and political affairs advisor to the MRND, openly encouraged Hutu, especially MRND militants, to exterminate the Tutsi. Colonel Laurent Serubuga, deputy chief of staff of the Rwandan Armed Forces, also participated, indicating support from the military leadership. Let's review the passage that reflects the genocide ideology spread by Mugesera during his speech in Kabaya. Militants of our movement, all gathered here, I believe you will understand my speech. I will elaborate on only 4 points. Firstly, I want to talk about our attitude to protect ourselves from the traitors and those who threaten us. In conclusion, of course, I will discuss the behaviors and strategies to adopt. Secondly, in recent days, I told you that we detest arrogance. This remains relevant. I won't dwell on the first point, considering the large gathering here, as I would have warned you to avoid blows from the MDR party, which is dying. Thirdly, I want us to deliberate on our inviolability, both in our region and throughout the country. The Prime Minister, I don't know if he's called Sengashitani or Sengyarimye, went to Cyangugu to prevent the Hutus from protecting themselves against the Tutsi who had placed mines, as you heard on the radio. They made fun of him, as you heard. He lost his mind along with all his supporters. Can you imagine these people? After this incident, you heard our president, Major General Juvenal Habyarimana, Ikinani, the Invincible, in his speech in Ruhengeri, telling you about his exploits. The others were confounded. You know what inviolability means in the country? Don't call the Inyenzi Inhotanyi anymore. In reality, they are Inyenzi. The Inyenzi are attacking us. Major General Juvenal Habyarimana, in collaboration with Colonel Serubuga, present here, who was his deputy at the beginning of the war, stood up with enthusiasm and drove them out of our borders. The Inyenzi returned where they came from. Those responsible of invading our country deserve the death penalty, as well as those who discourage our armed forces on the front. It is provided for by the law. Why don't we execute these people? I told someone claiming to be a member of the PL, the mistake we made in 1959, unfortunately, I was still a child, is letting you escape. I asked him if he had not learned about the Falashas who returned home to Israel from Ethiopia. He replied that he did not know about it. I retorted, you neither know how to hear nor read. I inform you that your home is in Ethiopia. We will make you pass through the Nyabarongo to get there quickly. So if I tell you to rise, we must indeed rise to fight the enemy. After this inflammatory speech by Mugesera, the Minister of Justice, Stanislas Mbonameka, a member of the PL, wrote a letter dated November 25, 1992 to the Attorney General. He asked to prosecute Mugesera and to send him updates on his case every 2 days. Although such correspondence is confidential, Mbonameka's letter was forwarded to the MRND and even to the press of his allegiance. On December 1, 1992, the MRND issued a statement entitled MRND condemns the terrorism of Minister Mbonameka. In this communique, the MRND publicly supported Mugesera's speech in Kawaya, declaring that there was no reason to prosecute him. The statement reproduced and supported some excerpts from this speech. The Constitution stipulates that anyone discouraging the armed forces in wartime will be punished by the death penalty. Currently, Minister Mbonameka is violating the law by wanting to arrest Mugesera, who is innocent. What offense has Mugesera committed? Is the fact of declaring that the inhabitants of Gisenyi will not tolerate being slaves a reason to be beheaded? The MRND demands that Mbonameka stops his dictatorship, his terrorism, and ensure peace for MRND militants. MRND militants must be vigilant because the virus that has plagued Mbonameka's justice persists. Mbonameka is dying, and it's not surprising because every dying animal agonizes. The early months of 1993 were marked by large-scale pogroms against the Tutsi in Gisenyi, Ruhengeri, and Byumba. At that time, Belgium exerted pressure on Rwanda, demanding an end to these massacres and threatening to suspend its aid. The Rwandan government then allegedly asked independent individuals to write to Belgium as ordinary citizens to beg them to reconsider their decisions. This led to the creation of the Circle of Rwandan Intellectuals, which sent an open letter to the Belgian ambassador on February 18, 1993. Instead of offering constructive proposals befitting intellectuals, the members of this circle chose to propagate hatred. Upon careful reading, it becomes apparent that the extermination of the Tutsi was imminent. These intellectuals begin their letter by vehemently condemning Belgium for denouncing the massacres committed by the government. They claim that Belgium took the wrong path and should have condemned the RPF instead of Rwanda. They continue by writing that the decision to impose sanctions on Rwanda for committing massacres against its people will exacerbate the Hutu-Tutsi divide, potentially leading to interethnic violence. The intellectuals further reaffirmed their ideology by stating that the Tutsi have never recognized the 1959 revolution and never imagined that power could shift to the majority ethnicity. They congratulated Belgium for supporting this revolution, but expressed bitterness that in 1993, Belgium no longer considered this past support. They also reminded Belgium that the RPF was composed of Ugandans from the NRA and that peace will only be restored if the international community compels Museveni to withdraw his soldiers from Rwanda because they are the ones training the RPF. These intellectuals also assert in their letter that the RPF is committing genocide against the Hutu in Rwanda. The international community is not aware of it, and the Hutu massacred by the RPF are also human beings who must enjoy human rights. They add that the international community should not only be concerned about human rights violations when committed against the Tutsi, who are a minority. However, these intellectuals realized they could not continue to deny the atrocities committed against the Tutsi by the government because they were evident to everyone. They then declared that they had no intention of supporting the killings in January 1993, but omitted to denounce the one leading them, namely the government. The intellectuals concluded their letter by warning Belgium to take precautions because no one can contain the anger of a people, and it is pointless to further enrage them with sentimental and biased positions. These statements reveals knowledge of a plan for genocide. Its 25 signatories belong to different sectors, indicating how all professions were involved in spreading the ideology of hatred between 1990 and 1994. Their signatories included Jean-Baptiste Karikumutima, electrical engineer; Frédéric Mupenda, chemical engineer; Dr. Eugène Rwamucyo, occupational health, hygiene, and environment physician; Epimac Rangisawa, chemistry graduate; Pierre Célestin Chicharo, electromechanical engineer; Jean-Baptiste Hategekimana, journalist. Simeon Musengimana, development agent. Papias Kandekwe, newspaper editor. Vedaste Ruyenza, environmentalist. Cyprien Ilyivuze, government official. Bonaparte Ndekezi, government official. Jean-Baptiste Mugimba, electroinformatics engineer. Tade Maniragaba, electrogaz agent. Jean Damascene Muhutu, electrogaz agent. Phineas Munyarukiko, government official. Jean-Pierre Hakizimana, Rwanda social security agent. Jean-Pierre Ruhira, engineer. Nabantu Sibomana, sociologist. Jean Chrysostome More, Rwanda social security agent. Juvenal Hategekimana, Rwanda social security agent. Emmanuel Sibomana, Rwanda social security agent. Innocent Iyamuremye, Ministry of Public Works employee. Jean-Marie Vianney Sabimana, Ministry of Public Works employee. Christine Mujawamaria, African Continental Bank agent in Rwanda. Marc Siniyobewe, government official. In Butare City, the local branch of the Cercle des Intellectuels Rwandais, called the Group of Rwandan Intellectuals in Butare, was founded at the end of 1992. It brought together university and high school teachers, students, researchers, and employees from different services in Butare. Instead of being a beacon for the people and advocating for social justice, this group was characterized by its hatred for the RPF and the Tutsi. One notable activity involved opposing a resolution between the Rwandan government and the RPF to withdraw French military personnel, part of the DAMI, which is the Military Assistance and Instruction Detachment, to be replaced by the UN peacekeeping forces. The intellectuals of Butare addressed a letter to President François Mitterrand on March 1, 1993, requesting not to implement this resolution, despite its agreement between the Rwandan government and the RPF in Inkotanyi. The intellectuals of Butare began their letter by outlining the problems in Rwanda, attributing them to the RPF's attack. They claimed the RPF was exterminating people wherever it went, aiming to seize power by force and establishing a dictatorship. They argued that if France withdrew its military, Rwanda would become ungovernable like Somalia. The letter, signed by nearly 300 people, mainly students, supervised by their professors, expressed the desire to keep French soldiers in Rwanda, aiming to thwart the restoration of peace and security. It is well known that the French military personnel in Rwanda from 1990 to 1993 were involved in training Interahamwe and committing harassment or violence against Tutsi, advocating for their stay, supported the genocide plan and the atrocities committed by the Rwandan government and its army, both backed by France. The names of professors and employees of the state and its institution in Butare who signed the letter are listed below. The 34 university professors included Dr. Jean Berkmas Shimyumuremyi, Vice Rector, Aloise Muhawenimana, Dean of the Faculty of Agronomy, Bernard Mutkwewingabo, Marie-Thérèse Kamire, François Banyeretse, Damien Yakaremye, Alexine Sabimana, Bernard Ndasaniye, Dr. Deogratias Bizimungu, Pierre Célestin Wigwaneza, Anastase Nkuranga, Dr. Calixte Gasana, Alphonse Niyibizi, Papias Kamatali, Jean-Baptiste Katabarwa, Faculty Dean, Edison Banguwiha, Stanislas Kanyandekwe, Augustin Nkundabashaka, Dr. Abel Dushimimana, Bruno Ngirabatware, Mathias Tyamungu, Céline Uwera, Balthazar Ntawumarayino, Alexandre Diambabaje, Welars Banzi, Xavier Mushinzimana, Silas Mureramanzi, Origène Nahimana, François Nzabuheraheza, Boniface Haririmana, François Cyubahiro, Canisius Habyarimana, Philbert Sengiyumva, and finally, Donat Ntaneza. The 12 researchers and employees from IRST included François Xavier Ayobangira, Jean-Baptiste Hakiza, Silver Munyaneza, Jean Damascene Bizimana, Ildefonse Murengezi, Dr. Bizimana Sekuye, Emmanuel Uyisabye, Alexandre Nsabimana, Jean-Pierre Mugabutsinze, Jean-Bernard Rugira, Head of Administration and Finance, François Gasengayire, and finally, Joseph Mvutiyumwami. The 30 university staff members included Alphonse Rudatsikira, Deputy Secretary General of the National University of Rwanda, Denis Mutagoma, UNR Personnel Chief, Adalbert Mudenge, Planning Department Head, Denis Murindabigwi, Administrative Assistant, Faustin Daisaba, Librarian, Jean-Baptiste Rubayiza, Anastasie Mukasakindi, Aloïse Habimana, Gaspard Karikezi, Gabriel Hategekimana, Joseph Sibomana, Zephirine Bagambiki, Service Head, Evariste Havugimana, Library Agent, Varoki Kinyangwa, Library Agent, Drosela Mukamurenzi, Social Worker, UNR, Josephine Mukashyaka, Stenographer, UNR, Mélanie Mukamunana, IT Specialist, UNR, Pierre Célestin Musangamfura, Telesfor Kuzagiriza, Désiré Pacifique Mushimimana, Jean-Léonard Savimana, Emmanuel Serugendo, Librarian, Epimac Nyandwi, Bookbinder, Jean-Baptiste Semwaga, Librarian, Jean-Baptiste Nzeimana, Librarian, Rémi Alphonse Nyera, Accountant, Anastase Nzawahimana, Stenographer, Evariste Ngamije, Laboratory Technician, Gérard Nyonzima, Inventory Manager, and Egide Kanobana, Secretary Accountant. The 14 teachers at Butare School Group included Innocent Habimana, Martin Habimana, Augustin Ngendahayo, Boniface Uwiringiyimana, Venuste Ntawukinakwanga, Tarcisse Kimanuka, Élisée Mutereye, Calixte Kanamugire, Espérance Uzamushaka, Protais Barushimana, Frédéric Ntabwoba, Eustache Ngaboyumwami, Jean Bosco Nahimana, and Alfred Muhizi. The 24 employees from other services in Butare included Dr. Alphonse Karangwa, Director of the Global Development Project of Butare, DGB, Dr. Cyril Mwigimba, a physician, Dr. Alphonse Karemera from Butare Hospital, Dr. Ignace Bigirimana Mugabo, a physician, Dr. Ciridion Sibomana, a veterinary doctor, Dr. Telesfor Iraguha, a physician in Butare, François Duthier, a civil engineer, Faustin Gwagachuzi, Dean of the Protestant Theology Faculty, Cyprien Musabirema, Radio Rwanda representative in Butare, Pierre Claver Carrera, head of the Rwandan Bibliography Center, Ildefonse Gwaniye, a laboratory technician, Jean-Baptiste Tabubara Ruhanya, teacher at the Parents School Group, Boniface Uwiringiyimana, teacher at the Parents School Group, Jean Delacroix Naruguriye, teacher at the Officers School, ESSO, Jean-Baptiste Sabune, agronomist, Juvenal Renzaho, head of the Forestry Division, Nathalie Ntaumarayino, Labofar employee, Théophile Batkware, Judicial Police Inspector, Faustin Rutaisire, a teacher, François Muganga, DGB Project employee, Jean-Baptiste Mugaragu, medical assistant, Evariste Nyiringango, Aloïse Uwimana, and Louis-Paul Pachis Rugira. On February 24, 1993 and March 1, 1993, intellectuals in Butare and students at the National University of Rwanda in Butare issued a press release condemning the negotiation scheduled to take place in Bujumbura between the RPF and some representatives of opposition political parties. The condemnation was based on the agenda, which included the examination of the presence of the French military personnel in Rwanda. The intellectuals demanded that French troops remain in Rwanda unless Uganda ceased supporting the RPF. They argued that the RPF did not exist and in reality the war was between Rwanda and Uganda. This denial of the right to Rwandan nationality for members of the RPF Inkotanyi, equating them to Ugandans, is one of the manifestations of the genocide ideology. In addition to the described campaign of terror, 14 Rwandan military personnel Acts of sabotage, intimidation, and harassment were committed against the high-ranking Tutsi and Hutu opposition members, especially those from the PL who refused to join the Hutu power extremist movement. The goal was to mobilize all possible means to facilitate the perpetration of the genocide. Dr. Jean Habyarimana, a Tutsi prefect of Butare and a member of the PL, was targeted for harassment by MRND-CEDER Hutu power supporters. Authorities at the university and public services committed numerous oppressive acts against Prefect Habyarimana, humiliating him and encouraging the population under his charge not to recognize his authority. These maneuvers primarily occurred in 1993. Two examples illustrate this. On January 15, 1993, the MRND prefectural office in Butare sent a letter to Prefect Habyarimana, slandering him and spreading it in the press. The letter, titled "Concerns Regarding Your Job Performance," was signed by Dr. Innocent Butare on behalf of MRND Butare President Amanda Rugira. In the letter, Innocent Butare accused Prefect Habyarimana of making decisions under the influence of PL members in Butare, specifically naming Dr. Vincent Munyeshuri, Gaëtan Nionizeye, Jean-Baptiste Kurawige, and Deo Nkurikinka. The letter failed to provide valid reasons, preventing the prefect from consulting with these individuals and aimed to restrict the prefect's interaction with his party members. Another unfounded accusation by Dr. Butare against Prefect Habyarimana concerned the transfer of judicial police inspectors, IPG, to neighboring communes like Hyanda, Mbazi, Huye, Ngoma, Ndora, and Gishamvu. He claimed that all these IPG were members of the PL, which he found incomprehensible. However, the recruitment and transfer of IPG fall under the Ministry of Justice's jurisdiction, not the prefect. The prefect was simply their hierarchical superior as the prefecture's head. Innocent Butare concluded the letter by stating that the alleged accusations against the prefect proved his intention to fight and destroy the MRND and its members. He asserted that the prefect would not succeed in any of his endeavors. Dr. Butare also claimed that the prefect wanted to dismiss all non-Butare natives working in the area and create divisions among residents. In reality, these conclusions revealed the letter's goal, to make it appear as though the prefect targeted individuals not from Butare and was adamant against the MRND. By doing so, Dr. Butare aimed to rally all employees working in Butare and originating from other regions to fight against Prefect Habyarimana and his PL party. Simultaneously, he sought to mobilize all extremist residents of Butare and promote unity within the Hutu power, aligning with the MRND-CEDER policy of dispersing authorities and cadres from MRND-CEDER-dominated regions like Ruhengeri and Gisenyi into Butare. On January 13, 1993, some employees working in the Butare Prefecture services published a similar letter condemning the prefect and accusing him of creating insecurity, ethnic discrimination, interference in services, arrogance, and harassment of employees. According to the letter's authors, insecurity stemmed from the Tutsi individuals joining the Inhotanyi, returning to Butare, and planting mines. However, the letter did not establish a link between these acts and the prefect. Furthermore, it alleged that the prefect had revoked Hutu employees and replaced them with Tutsi, a baseless claim, as the hiring, transfer, and dismissal of prefecture service employees fell under the Ministry of Interior's jurisdiction. Those working within the prefecture services were appointed or dismissed by the ministry, not the prefect. The employees within the prefecture services were not appointed or dismissed by the prefect, but by the Ministry of Interior. This letter was signed by Zefani Nyirinkwaya, Deputy Prefect in the Butare Prefecture responsible for political affairs, Charles Harindintwari, Supervisor of Bridges and Roads, Leonard Mutabaruka, Deputy to the Supervisor of Bridges and Roads, Wilson Munyamagana, Director of Prefecture Center for Development and Permanent Training, CPDFP, Michel Habumugisha, Deputy Prefect of Nyabisindu, Vincent Gironsanga, Mayor of Nyabisindu Commune, Asiel Simbarikure, Deputy Prefect of Usoro, José Nditunze, employee at the National Museum, Théophile Batware, Judicial Police Inspector, and Pascal Haririmana. The letter was made public by Isiwo newspaper, issue number 83 from January 9th to 16th, 1993. Isiwo mentioned that all signatories were members of MRND-CEDER except Zéphanie Nyilingwaya, a member of the PSD who was expelled from her party due to her signature. Nyilingwaya was a Hutu from the Rukondo commune in Gikongoro. He was killed during the genocide for the reason that remain unclear. Some believe he was killed by northern soldiers deployed by Captain Ildefonse Nizeyimana, who mistakenly thought he was Tutsi. Isiwo also stated that Prefect Habyarimana was harassed due to his diligence at work and his fight against corruption, injustice, and ethnic and regional discriminations practiced by the later signatories. Instead of changing their behaviors and attitudes, they defamed him by attributing their own crimes to him. As for Charles Harindinwari, Isiwo reported that since his arrival in Butare, he was identified as corrupt. He built houses beyond his means and acquired other assets like vehicles. According to Isiwo, he compiled a list of fictitious agents and collected their salaries. These embezzlements were carried out with the complicity of Claudine Umulisa, the wife of Dr. Jean-Baptiste Katabarwa, who was an influential member of the CEDER and taught at the university. In short, Isiwo demonstrated the indecent behavior of each later signatory and explained that some agents were transferred from Butare by competent services, not by the prefect, who did not have such prerogatives. Isiwo provided the names of each agent supposedly dismissed by Prefect Habyarimana to be replaced by Tutsi. The newspaper explained that all of this was a crude lie intended to defame the prefect. Below are the names of the individuals involved. Michel Ruzigana, who was deputy prefect and never dismissed but requested a leave of absence. Emmanuel Bitangusabe, who was transferred to Kigali by his supervising ministry because his position in Butare was abolished. Jean-Paul Mbanzarugo, who was a labor inspector in Butare, requested his own transfer. Wilson Munyamagana, who was a director of CCDFP and transferred from Butare by his supervising ministry. Simeon Gwamakuba, representative of the Rwanda Social Security Fund, who was also transferred by his hierarchy. Finally was Apolinel Sengiyumva, a prosecutor in Butare who was transferred by the Ministry of Justice. Isiwo concludes its article by revealing that the authors of these statements intended to reignite tensions in a region characterized by harmony. Isiwo commended the PSD party for separating from Deputy Prefect Nyilingwaya, stating that his opinions were not those of the PSD. In fact, the letter's authors were members of the MRND-CEDER who simply wanted to undermine the authority of the prefect, who was impeccable in his duties. The goal was to divide the population of Butare and prepare for the spread of the ideology of hatred and genocide. Another association of intellectuals created for ideological purposes was the Melchior Ndadaye Foundation, established on November 7, 1993 by intellectuals from various backgrounds, including senior government officials and NGOs. Its statutes state that its objective is the defense of democracy and the promotion of human rights. The headquarters of this foundation were in Gisenyi. As demonstrated by its notarized statutes, it was founded by 40 members, including 32 Rwandans, 6 Congolese, and 2 Burundians. The Congolese members are as follows: Emmanuel Sebagaramyi Nyandwi, professor at the Saint Fidèle Institute; Théophile Mabuka, rural development technician; Theophas Mahuku, director of ADRA Nord Kivu; Baltazar Shamba, rural development consultant in Gisenyi; Ntakomuruhuka, official at CPGL; Gilbert Mundanikurebanyurwa, employee at the Christian School Group in Gisenyi. The 2 Burundians are Hyacinthe Niyibigira, an employee at Electrogaz in Gisenyi, and Rodolphe Baranyizigiye, director of Gisenyi Teacher Training College. Among the Rwandans, there were extremists who had a significant role in the genocide, such as Jean Bosco Barayagwiza and Florent Kamayana, who propagated the genocide ideology through the Imvaho newspaper. The board of directors of the Melchior Ndadaye Foundation included Vedaste Rurinda, legal representative and employee of the Gisenyi Prefecture; Sylvain Masabarakiza, first alternate legal representative, employee of Bralirwa; Sebagarambye Nyandwi, second alternate legal representative, teacher at Saint Fidel Institute in Gisenyi; Jean Delacroix Muhamira, secretary, employee of Electrogaz; Rodolphe Baranyizigiye, treasurer, director of a secondary school; Daniel Ntawumenyumunsi, assistant treasurer, employee of Petro Rwanda; Pierre Claver Mupendana, first legal counselor, employee of Minafet; Germain Sanzumucho, second legal counselor, official at CPGL; Dr. Jean-Baptiste Gatorano, first social affairs counselor, director of the Gisenyi Health Region; Ntakumuruhuka, second social affairs counselor, official at CPGL; Malakindu Wabire, first management counselor; and finally, Faustin Sabimana, second management counselor. Although the Melchior Ndadaye Foundation claimed to defend democracy and human rights, its operations and publications were characterized by unconditional support for MRND-CDR Hutu power and the propagation of the genocide ideology against the Tutsis and the members of the RPF in Inkotanyi. One example proving this is its declaration on December 1, 1993, titled Declaration on the Violation of the Arusha Accords by the RPF. This text attributes the 1993 massacres against the Tutsis in the Mutura, Gisenyi, Nyamugari, Kyeru, Kidaho, and Humba communes in Ruhengeri to the RPF, even though it did not control that area at the time. These massacres were in fact carried out by the government army and Interahamwe Impuzamugambi. The Melchior Ndadaye Foundation's declaration also claims that the RPF's goal is to exterminate the entire Hutu ethnic group and urges the international community to stand united to help Rwanda repel it into Uganda. This declaration aimed to conceal the responsibility of the Rwandan government and its army in the massacres revealed by the 1993 International Commission's expert report. The same declarations propagates hatred and justifies that Tutsis are responsible for the insecurity and troubles prevailing in Rwanda. Confronting them is portrayed as acts of legitimate defense by Rwandans, as if RPF members were not Rwandans. This clearly reflects the genocide ideology. Another association of intellectuals created for ideological purposes is the Circle of Progressive Republicans, CRP, founded in February 1992 by a group of extremists from the northern part of the country. The idea of creating the CRP was launched during a conference held on the Nyakinama campus in Ruhengeri, as demonstrated by the researcher Tom Dahiro. Based on the analysis of the CRP's meeting recommendations, it was the CRP that conceived the idea of founding the CEDER, intending to expedite the genocide plan. The CRP is also responsible for the name of its militia, Impuzamugambi. The CRP was initiated by intellectuals from the Ruhengeri Prefecture, consisting of the following individuals: Ndereyehe Charles Ntahontuye from the Cyabingo commune, CEO of the PDAG project, based in Gikongoro, designated as the CRP president; Nahimana Ferdinand from the Gatonde commune, CEO of Renfort, appointed as the first vice president and head of the Analysis of Strategies Commission; Michel Wakuzakundi from the Mukingo commune, CEO of the state-owned Sodeparal factory, appointed as the second vice president and leader of the Evaluation and Orientation Commission; Manidiho Faustin from the Nguli commune, director at the Ministry of Mines and Artisanat, Minimart, appointed as the secretary head of the Information Commission; Hakizimana Deogratias from the Kigombe commune, chief of division at Minimart, appointed as the treasurer; Nyirasafari Gaudence from the Kigombe commune, member of the MRND Central Committee and CEO of the National Population Office, ONAPO; Renzaho Juvenal from the Nyakinama commune, head of service at the Presidential Palace and advisor to President Habyarimana; Gasore Rukara Pierre from the Kigombe commune, executive secretary of the Prime Project. Nizeimana Felicien did not specify his commune of origin or function, but noted as a member of the Analysis of Strategies Commission. Ntabahwana Suku Jean Bernard from the Mukingo commune, IT specialist at UNDP. Rutayoberana Alexandre from the Nyarutovu commune, legal advisor at Beka. Sisi Jean Damascene from the Kidaho commune, chief of division at ORTPN. Dr. Mutkwawingawo Bernard from the Ruhondo commune, professor at UNR. Dr. Semasaka Gabriel from the Kieru commune, veterinary agent at Minagri. Gasore Alexis from the Gatonde commune, project director at PSG. Chimimana Alexis from the Nyamugari commune, journalist at Orinfort. Gatahia Jean Bergmans from the Kidaho commune, official at Minitrap. Karabayinga Celestin from the Nyakinama commune, official at Orinfort. Semasaka Alois from the Muchingo commune, official at the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Minisupres. Ndagijimana Jean-Claude from the Gatonde commune, official at Electrogaz. Mbonyintwari Aphrodis from the Nyarutovu commune, official at Minagri. This group held several meetings on December 22, 1991, January 5, 1992, and January 17, 1992, to define statutes and choose a name. The proposed names included Republicans of MRND, Progressives of MRND, Circle of Republicans, Club of Progressive Republicans, Unit of Progressive Republicans, and Circle of MRND for the Defense of the Republic, among others. They eventually adopted the name Circle of Progressive Republicans and created a section in Butare led by Dr. Jean Guamucho, known as the Circle of University Republicans of Butare. These proposals clearly indicate the extremist tendency of the group with anti-Tutsi views. According to a document from the Central Intelligence Service dated August 18, 1992, written by its director, Dr. Augustin Iyamuremye, Ndereyehe resigned from the MRND following a meeting in Ruhengeri on the same day, believing his party was incapable of defending Hutu interests. The document demonstrates that Ndereyehe and his colleagues disapproved of MRND's inability to defend its members, including Ferdinand Nahimana, when he was dismissed from Orinfort, as well as Fabien Neretse, director of Osir Café, Félicien Kainamura, director general at the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, Alexandre Muterahejuru at the Ministry of Public Service, and Michel Wakuzakundi, director general of the state-owned Sodeparal. The plan to perpetrate genocide by the Circle of Progressive Republicans was also exposed by Isiwo newspaper, issue number 45, from March 4th to 11th, 1992. It reported that intellectuals had founded a party and an association with the first solemnly proclaimed objective of exterminating the Tutsis. Isiwo expressed its disapproval of this plan, hoping that just Hutus would condemn it. The CRP extremists expanded and established branches nationwide, especially at the National University of Rwanda, the Butare campus at Nyakinama. On March 4, 1993, another group of intellectuals from Yumba and Ruhengeri published a mobilization document for Northern Hutus, urging them to participate in the civil self-defense program titled Distress Call from the Disaster-Stricken Areas of Ruhengeri and Yumba. The authors included Charles Ndereyehe Ntahonuye, Jean Bosco Bicamompaka, Faustin Musekura, Focas Kainamura, Christophe Ndagali, and Stanislas Sinibagiwe. The document was also signed by the prefect of Ruhengeri, Baliyanga Sylvestre, and that of Byumba, Bizimana Augustin. The document reproduced the minutes of a meeting held in Kigali on March 4, 1993, bringing together various representatives from the prefectures of Ruhengeri and Byumba. In this document, the RPF was demonized for all evils, and a call was made for civil self-defense, implying the establishment of instruments to kill those qualified as the enemies of the country, namely Tutsis indiscriminately and regime opponents. To push the northern population to support this hate propagated by these intellectuals, they relied on the negative effects of the war, population displacements, to falsely claim that the RPF was preparing genocide against Hutus. This lie played a crucial role in conscience of Hutu populations, especially among the displaced in Nyakyonga, who played a significant role in the genocide against Tutsis from April 1994. Below is the essential message revealed in the minutes. The RPF is determined to seize power by force and outright annex Rwanda to Uganda. aiming to fulfill Museveni's Machiavellian dreams and establish a Hamitic empire in the interlacustrine region. The Inhotanyi are part of a Ugandan army. It is Uganda that attacked us. The Banyaruhengeri and Banyabyumba regret that, since October 1st, 1990, the Rwandan government has not denounced Uganda's responsibility in this conflict. Political, administrative, and other leaders must take all necessary measures for Rwandans to realize the gravity of the situation and feel fully engaged in defending the country. It is essential to mobilize the population to ensure defense and civil protection to guarantee national sovereignty. A genocide is underway, preventing the children of Ruhengeri and Byumba from continuing their studies due to war. This intellectual genocide cannot persist. On September 4, 1992, a communiqué was released by those claiming to be Hutu from Kigali, urging all Hutu to leave their parties and join the ranks of the SEDER to fight against the Inhotanyi and the Arusha peace negotiations. The communiqué recommended that MINADEF all Hutu in the use of firearms. It explicitly encourages Hutu to rid themselves of Tutsi. The communiqué states, "Dear Hutu brothers, be vigilant, prepare yourselves sufficiently to confront our many enemies, the RPF, the PL, and their accomplices. Our enemies have influenced the government of Sengyarimye to make it their instrument. This government is at the service of the RPF to the extent that it decided to dissolve the SEDER party, which advocates for Hutu interests as the RPF demanded in Arusha negotiations presented by the traitor Pastor Bizimungu and RPF accomplices represented by Boniface Ngurishigihugu. Although not all Hutus are in the SEDER, no Hutu hates it, except those Twagiramungu and Mugenzi have bribed with RPF money. Where would we be without the advent of the SEDER? Wouldn't the government of Sengyarimye have sold us all? When this government realized that the Inhotanyi could not take Kigali by force, thanks to the vigilance of the Rwandan army and the SEDER, it had us attacked at home by bandits. We all, Hutu, military and civilians, rise up as one and fight against the government of Sengyarimye, which is at the service of the RPF and their accomplices. We request MINADEF to train all Hutu in firearm use, since the Tutsi have learned it and already possess them." Several intellectuals who should have followed the path of reason and rejection of hatred succumbed to the deceitful politics of General Habyarimana's regime, harboring widespread hostility against the RPF and choosing to be architects of a genocidal regime. A few intellectuals managed to break free from this influence around 1993 when they realized the regime was leaning toward a genocidal call, but they were a tiny minority. Check out the rest of our podcast and share them with others